After going over the examples we just saw about where things played out quite nicely, I now want to go over the examples where things might play out, according to the lower probability events, because in the end, we're looking at probabilities. We're not looking at guarantees. There's some important remarks I want to make. And I think it's also very important to look at the other side of things so that A, we're best equipped to deal with them, and also B, get an objective view of things. Because again, we're not trying to sell the holy grail here. We're trying to analyze statistics, and to do that, we need to be objective. So in that, we found some best practices that are mostly focused in this case on dealing with improbable events. And I think it's going to make us way better equipped to deal with them. And yeah, hopefully help us anticipate on them. So best practices, let's get into them. First of all, use statistics in confluence with your TA. I have already said this in the very first video, but I want to emphasize it because it's, in my opinion, very important. Yes, you can make some statistically driven strategies, but I will show you some examples where sometimes it just makes sense, or oftentimes it just makes sense to use your TA. We're going to dive into that. The more the day has developed, the more precise the data will be. And I am talking about the day in this case, but again, there's levels to this. We can do multiple time frames, but in this case, we're sticking to the example of the day. And what I mean with this is, the longer the day progresses, so say you're halfway through the day, it will give you a better view of what might happen and what might not happen compared to when you're in the second hour of the day, for obvious reasons. But still, further on in the day is what we notice the best time to make decisions based on statistics. Because if you're at 12 p.m., you have more PA, there's more PA that has developed, and also the statistics have evolved, also with time adjusted filtering. Give less importance to statistics during low volatility days and tight ranges. And we're going to dive into this more, but basically low probability events, we've noticed they tend to happen a lot during low volatility days and very tight ranges of price action. 90% is not 100%, and 10% is not 0%. Saying 98% is not 100%, 2% is not 0%. Maybe I should have even put that 100% is not even 100%. I've also said this in the first video, but I want to emphasize it. 100% simply means that for the selected date range, whatever you're looking at, if you see 100%, it means that in your selected date range, that event happened 100% of the time. That does not mean it will happen 100% of the time. This is what we've discussed during the first video, and I think it makes sense. There are historical occurrences, not probabilities. Of course, it's something 100%. If you have enough data, then you're going to have a very high probability. If you're extrapolating, that's going to happen again, but it's not the same. Okay? Let's take a deeper look of what I'm talking about by diving into the charts. So today is Valentine's Day, and Valentine's Day, February 14th has been kind to us. We've had quite a pump, and right now we are left with this daily P1 hour 4, daily P2 hour 14. I want to take this as an example because this was something I was discussing with a member of mine. Now, daily P1 at hour 4 and daily P2 at hour 14 gives us the following probabilities. Hour 4 is only 2.2% probability of being P1, and hour 14 6.6%. Even if you do time adjusted, it will become even more clear because you have 19.7 against 59.1. Now, what I want to say here, or what I said here, because the idea was then, well, because there's only 2% chance, or a 2% historical occurrence that this is the low, then you might be inclined to say, well, I'm going to short this and go here. And this is when I said, well, I wouldn't do that. I said, personally, I don't think the top is in yet. And this is because I use statistics in confluence with TA. We zoom out, a look at this massive uptrend, right? We have this massive impulsive move, absolutely massive. Right? What is this? Just almost non-stop 35% up. So that's a lot. So you don't have to know any very advanced TA to realize that this is a very aggressive uptrend, very aggressive. What it would mean for the daily P1 to be taken out is that we would have to drop 5.5% from the top. So we have to drop 5.5% at the top, pretty much a V-shape recovery, or well, not a recovery, V-shaped dump in a massively bullish environment. That's just very improbable. If you wouldn't have statistics, you would think that you would probably not say that that's going to happen at this point. So in this case, what I say is, well, I prioritize my TA over the statistics. And this is when I always say 10% is not 0%. In this case, 2.2% is not 0%. Yes, it does not happen a lot, but it has to happen sometime. And if it's going to happen, then it looks like this is a very valid moment for it to happen. Hour 4, my best guess is that today it will happen because we are in that very bullish market structure. I always say the best trades are when statistics align with your TA. In this case, statistics do not align with the TA. There's no confluence. So use your TA. That's the first part. The second part is what I already said, is that you have more data to go with and you can be more confident as the day progresses. So for example, if you were here, then you had daily P1 at hour 0 and daily P2 at hour 1. At this point, you cannot really say a lot yet. Oh, I didn't want to do that. So what we can see, what happened here is that we go down. So now we have daily hour 0 and daily P2 hour 4. You got to realize there's something I want to mention, that you got to see a lot of this at the start of the day when hour 0 is the P1, simply because you open at hour 0. The day opens at hour 0. So at the start of the day, in the first hour, it's always going to be hour 0. Always. So in the first 4 hours, I would be careful with making any assumptions on that, because it's just always going to happen. It doesn't change anything about the fact that it happens 30% of the time, but you're probably going to have more times where it starts off. I mean, you're going to have 100% of the time you start off with P1 at hour 0 in the first hour because you open there. So if you go further on, here you already have way more data to go on, so to say, and you don't actually have to wait this long, but you get the point that the longer you go and the longer you progress, the more data you have to go on. Then the final thing I want to mention about this is, say we have the daily open here, and what I said, low volatility days or contracted price action. Say we open here at hour 0 and we do this, and we're halfway through the day and we have this, and we have this as P1 and this as P2, then or let's even say we had this as P2, because this would give us a way more likely event for this to be P2, or even just a look, or for this to be P1, P2. But the thing is that you have very contracted price action, This is what I call a nothing burger. Like, nothing is really happening here. You're probably also gonna have very low volatility in terms of volume, very low volume. So what very often happens at this point is, say it's hour 0, that at some point you take both of them out or something. Either way, I would not be, if I see this kind of price action, I would not be very confident that this is going to hold. So be mindful of that and be careful for those kind of environments. A good example is here. For example, you can see here daily P1, hour 0, daily P2, hour 10. This is low probability, this is high probability. But you can see it's just nothing is happening. There's no price action. Really, well, there is price action, but not any that is really doing anything. And in the end, what happens is that, bam, you see exactly what I talked about. We take out the low and we take out the high, and we keep on ranging for the rest of the day. So in this case, this is now daily P1 and daily P2, and we keep going. Well, we're actually already in the next day. This is not the daily close. The daily close was already here. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. And actually, the funny thing is that even though when you're in a range, you can actually also use statistics to kind of try and time these kind of moves when you take the liquidity. So for example, what I said here, this was when I was talking to a member who just joined, who was trying to make sense of things. So here, 57.8% was the probability for the high this time. and 4.9% was probability for low to be P1. So what I said was higher chance to take out the daily high would therefore be to take out the daily low in the next 2 hours. And like I said this here, followed by a move up and taking out P1, because 13, 14 is next high probability zone to put in a P1, which is exactly what happened, right? We ended up putting it in at our 13, so 1 p.m. So very good example of why we want to be careful with a high probability high like this. You know, oftentimes during this kind of price action, it gets taken out. And you can use some, like I'm very careful with using statistics in this kind of environment. In this case, I used it, you know, to kind of time the liquidity hunt. But that's the only way I would try to use it in this kind of environment personally. Be creative yourself how you want to use it. But if I see this kind of price action, then if I see during a high probability event, you know, we take liquidity, then yes, that's maybe an interesting area for targeting the other side of liquidity. So that's all I wanted to say. Just repeating that, use statistics in confluence with your TA, very important. The more the day is developed, the more precise the data will be. Give less importance to statistics during low volatility days in tight ranges. 90% is not 100%, 99% is also not 100%, 10% is not 0%, 1% is not 0% either. And even if it's 0%, it's historical occurrences, not probabilities. So with that out of the way, we can go into some more features of the dashboard, which we'll cover in the next video.